Guys, it is very good to be here, and I again would like to thank Ellie and for this invitation, for the workshops yesterday, and also for the title of today's presentation. It was so big I had to ring Ellie and say, what do you really want here? But it is about how we can improve the lives of individuals with problems of the lower limb, and you can see how big a topic that is. You're nearly at lunch, and together I hope that in this 30 minutes that we can really just take home some key messages that might help you in your practice when you go back tomorrow. So let's get started. With that, I would like to just say it has been such a lovely event. I have found everyone so lovely, so friendly, so welcoming and helpful. But I also want to say that today's presentations and papers and speakers have been some of the best that I've heard in a long time, and I have thoroughly enjoyed myself. I'm going to go back invigorated, just like you, so that we can go back and just keep getting this right. So thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to give you a message and a greeting of hi from the Healthy Leg Club. This is from Daylesford, Victoria, which is a different state to where I live, but they wanted to send you some images, and if you can see the image, I know it's a little bit faded, but they're all smiling, they're all waving, and this message is actually from the district nurse, who's a continence nurse advisor as well. And she wanted to know that they opened 3.5 years ago. They're still going strong. They've treated 153 people so far at the moment, or they have 153 members have gone through. Lots of people throughout Victoria are wanting to start groups, and they go and visit, just like people come to your club. And their initial core groups still attend, and they won the Health Leg Club Volunteer Award in 2016. And they called it their first success story, but their first member who healed has subsequently returned just recently, and she's chosen to come and stay with her daughter so that she can attend the club, because the club is 3 hours away from where she lives. So that's a message from the clinician to you. But then the members wanted to send you a message as well. So they said that Healthy Leg Club has become a social hub of enjoyment. We have not only the success of the healthy legs, but we've started an armchair Tai Chi exercise group, which is run by a volunteer. People are very happy. These are their words to you. They're very happy about how well their legs are healing by attending the club, and we're all happy little Vegemites at our club. People enjoy the social aspects of it being a club, and there's always something very yummy to eat, brought along by club members and a smiling face to talk to. We have become family. So that's the end of my talk. Because I think that is why you do what you do, and why this entity exists. Because we touch people's lives, don't we? It's that unique, complex, multifaceted thing that makes us who we are and makes them who they are. And we have this amazing opportunity to touch that life. We also have the opportunity to make their life worse, to make their life just stay the same, or we have the extraordinary opportunity to make it better. And I think that's why we strive to continually not just do what we've always done, but question ourselves and say, is there a better way? Just as Keith opened your session today on innovation. We want to make progress where progress is desired, making things better. So I have had the extraordinary opportunity to work with Ellie and also with Roland on a group from an international group working on a World Union Wound Healing Society project, which initially was presented in 2016, and we're going to continue that work through to the next World Union Congress, so I certainly hope you're going to be there in 2020. And this document is available from the Leb Club table. I think you can find it. But one of the things that we were looking at in particular was advocacy. So when I looked at this massive topic that Ali gave me and how it could involve the neuropathic foot, someone with lymphedema, someone with straight, uncomplicated venous disease, or maybe mixed disease, which we see so much of now with rheumatoid arthritis and inflammatory conditions as well. Maybe they have an arterial limb to be dealing with. Maybe there is an atypical wound, such as PG or a malignancy. There were so many conditions of the lower limb. I thought, how can I present to you something that applies to us both? And I think it may be the subject of advocacy. So we're going to look at that, and I am going to challenge you to change the paradigm or change the way you think about that word and how it applies to each of us uniquely every day. We're going to refocus on what may be really important and also look at some actions that we can take. So let's look at the definition of what advocacy is and where it came from. The original word, the Latin, was one called to aid or a pleader. But advocare was to add a voice and to hear their voice. When we look at advocacy as it relates to healthcare today, it originally came, well, it's at least 60 years old as a terminology, and it came from pediatrics and in the management of leukemia. And that's where that term came, total care. I don't know if any of you are my age, and this was very a nursing thing, total care. And also this Dr. Wolfenberger, he, to this day, the foundational definition of advocacy has come from his work, and he was dealing with disability. But now we've seen this term come across all elements of healthcare. When 40 years ago, it began in the United States to be linked very much with something called a person's right or a patient's right. Now, when I say that word patient, you know why I do, because it's so widely used. But please supplement member, client, resident, whoever it is that you are advocating with. And that's where it's come from in the 70s. So if we look at this definition, its advocacy is a functioning aspect. It is speaking, acting, and writing with minimal conflict of interest on behalf of the interests of an individual or a group of people in order to promote and protect and defend the welfare, the justice of either that individual or group in a fashion that strives to be empathetic and vigorous. And if there was ever an empathetic and vigorous group, it's these people in this room. Who, when, and sort of why do we advocate? Well, we're particularly in this session looking at the clinician as an advocator. And that, of course, can be nursing, allied health, our medical teams, and also researchers in relation to the way that they design their studies, etc. But when we look at the patient and how we're advocating on the member for them, I want you to think of them as a consumer, just like we did in the workshop yesterday. Consumer health information is information and support that we give to them. They are a consumer of the services that we have to offer. And just like myself, if I go and get my car serviced as a consumer, I really hope that the man servicing my car will be focused on what I'm telling him my issue with my car is, and that he'll communicate well, that I hope that he'll do a good job, won't cut corners, and will deliver a quality care. And also, if there's a problem or I've got a complaint or I've got feedback, I hope that he'll engage in that when those expectations of mine are not met. Are you a consumer? Do you agree with that's what we expect? When we go into Marks and Spencer's, which I really love, I'm going to buy online. I'm going to go back and buy online. So this is what people in healthcare expect as well. They want us to be focused on them, they want a quality service, and if there's a problem or feedback, they want to be heard, and let's work through this together. We're no different, we're the same. So then the application of this in the context of what we're talking about to advocate means that there's three things going on. They have rights, they have needs, and there is outcomes to be met, isn't it? And whether that outcome is healing or it's non-healable and it's symptom control, there's still outcomes. Whether it's reduction of cost but improvement of efficiency, we don't know. The outcome is going to be there and it is real. So if I shared with you the Australian Charter of Healthcare Rights, I just want you to know it's incredibly similar to the Patient Rights Act from the NHS in Scotland from 2011. Ours was written in 2008, and it really just said, when you enter the healthcare system in our country, you should have access to the specific care that you need. And wasn't that interesting this morning from Professor Whiteley, and how I want you to know we're facing the exact problem in Australia with people having to put their hand in their own pocket to get their care that they need from an endovascular perspective. So, but that will change as we drive that change. That care will be safe and delivered in a professional and competent way, that we will treat them with respect, that we will communicate in an open and timely way, in a way that it's understood, that they are able, if they wish to join in the decisions and the choices about care, and that we will handle their information appropriately, and it is okay to whinge and complain. It's okay to say this isn't right, or I'm concerned, or I have an issue, and that concern will be heard and we will work together for it. So that's where we're sitting at the moment, and you guys are as well too. So if we just sort of draw the line in the sand and say that there are healthcare rights, and when I really started to break it down in my mind, I thought, well, there's people receiving care. There's people giving care, thus there is your partnership, isn't it? And sometimes as healthcare professionals, we're on the other end as well too, or our family member, and we know what that's like. So if we took that one further step, we have rights and needs of the people receiving care, and the people delivering care are the ones who advocate. And we advocate about everything. Because the terminology of advocate was, I think, really just left us with a sense of, I'll advocate that you get this dressing, or I'll advocate that that happens. But in fact, what we're being asked to advocate for is their rights and their unique individualised needs. And that's how together we can deliver safe and quality person-centred or focused care. So if that is the generalisation about advocacy in healthcare, then why would it be any different with someone with a problem with their lower limb, that is wound related, or a wound on their body? It is no different. So if we look at who the advocators are, then it's pretty complex. There are people who advocate at a more system level, such as your organisation, your charity, association, professional bodies. Obviously the DOH and I don't know, everything that goes on in the UK here and government. And there is definitely health advocates. Individually, it can be families, independents. That's where we fit, healthcare professionals, and actually they can employ or engage patient advocates. And the person can advocate for themselves as well. So it's really broad, isn't it, all of this engagement. And that's why the term is so misunderstood, because everyone is looking at it from their own perspective. So there are conflicting definitions, different approaches, and diverse perspectives. And so one of the things that we want to see happen is to define this as it relates to someone receiving wound care, and actually define consensus for clinicians who are caring and advocating for those with wounds. And that's part of this project with Ellie and the Universal team. We also would like to see a universally adopted Bill of Rights or charter for people who have a wound. And you know that there is one that's linked to the Association for the Advancement of Wound Care, and that has been endorsed and placed on the UMA website. But it is not universally accepted at this point in time. So we want to see that change. So advocacy is the process of standing alongside someone, an individual who's disadvantaged, speaking out on their behalf and defending their right. We know that it comes up loud and clear in our professional codes and the International Council of Nursing as well. This concept is that, and this has come from 1995, so a long time ago, and I think it has stood the test of time, that advocacy is not just merely defending the infringement of someone's rights. Okay? Advocacy for nursing is to support an individual to promote his or her well-being, the way that they see their life and perceive their life as understood by that individual. It is an ethic of practice, and that's why it is applicable to every one of us, no matter what discipline or specialty we're involved with. The last time I was here was in 2013. It was a very enjoyable event, and it was just 1 year after the launch of the Wounds International Consensus Document on Wellbeing, of which I had an opportunity to work with the International Working Party. And so this concept of wellbeing now has been discussed for many years, but it is now up to us to recognise this significance on their life, and that the importance of meeting their psychosocial and spiritual needs is core to this business of healthcare. And in fact, what's been proposed by Douglas in 2010 is that we, in the choices we make, in the things that we say, the actions that we do, we create environments where people can heal. The core business of health is care, and more importantly is the work and publications that talk about individualised or tailored therapeutics, personalised medicine. I can remember when someone would present in my clinic and they had a venous leg ulcer. They were all treated the same, treated the way we thought was right, and everyone was in the same bucket. And today we know that we can individualise it. It can be very helpful and enlightening to all. So by meeting their needs, quality service, optimising outcomes, we can do that. Because if we lose sight of them, if we begin to treat them all the same and not as an individual, without that centeredness, medicine loses its human face, and it leaves the person alone, just alone in what we call medicine, amidst medical technology, paper guidelines and statistical figures. We want to change that. This concept of being person-focused in wound care has an origin of over 17 years now, and no one does that better than the Leg Club. Person issues and concerns, as was discussed this morning by Alan, I use the acronym ICE. What are your issues? What are your concerns? What are your expectations? It is one of the first questions as we move through together. But it is all done in the context of diagnosis, knowing what we are dealing with, their unique contributing factors, and locally making a difference to that bed, to the skin, and to the anatomical region where that wound is, and in the context of caring for them as a whole person. It is that respectful of a person, delivered with this thing called compassion and empathy, and it is care that is responsive to their rights. So if that's a little bit of a summary, I guess I want to pose the question, like I did yesterday, are we there yet? Have we begun that journey? I think we have. Do you agree? We have. Are we there yet? I don't think we are, not across the board. And there are so many times that in our own practice we reflect, don't we? And I'll think to myself, I didn't handle that very well, or I didn't really hear her then, or I actually wasn't present. I wasn't really listening then. Unless we're doing that every day, that we're involved with them, we will just become the robots that leave them stranded and alone. So there's two ways that we are dealing with incredibly vulnerable individuals. These individuals have rights and they have needs. Let's have a look at how sometimes things fall through the crack and we are unable to meet their need. No access to the right treatment or care. Has that come through today? The person who needs to be trained in the skill that is required to deliver care or do some screening isn't available. Maybe there's no respect for their individual characteristics or needs. Maybe the person delivering the care isn't a good communicator or doesn't want to engage in that sort of person-centred approach. And we've all seen and heard those stories, haven't we? It would never happen here, but we hear the stories every single day. Maybe they are excluded from their choices and the planning, and we've heard that happening as well. And maybe they can be in a very unequal relationship where they and where they feel threatened if they've got a concern or a worry. The other way that these wounded, vulnerable individuals can slip through these cracks is when they have needs. And that's what I'm talking about from a physical perspective, from their nurturing, of their nutrition, their food. What are we doing at the wound bed? How are we addressing that biofilm, etc.? Pain, malodor, mobility, and the social needs and the emotional and the spiritual. I don't think I need to spend any more time on that because this is what you firmly believe. But when we don't get it right or our colleagues don't get it right, this terrible cascade of event occurs. If we fail to meet some of their rights or some of their needs, they then go on to have this terrible negative sense of wellness. An element inside of them is not right, it's broken. That then leads to negative outcomes, and in fact, together we start to see negative emotions, and it just goes around and around in a circle where this relationship is broken. We see labelling. I don't know if you've ever heard of labelling, and a thing called blunting, when we become so accustomed to these challenges that it's nearly like we switch off and we're not quite there. They know that and they can sense that. So Roland, I would just like to ask the time because my watch has gone off and I can't see it. Lovely. And lunch is at past. Lovely. Perfect. You know, beautiful Christine Moffat, who is loved and adored around the world, and this joint article that was written from 10 years ago. I think it still stands the test of time. If we didn't hear these stories today, I wouldn't present this. But in a very small sample, they did interviews with those living with wounds, and they did interviews with those delivering the care. And the person living with the wound said, sometimes there's little understanding of the complex issues that the person that I'm dealing with or grappling with. And sometimes they felt that leg ulcers were insignificant to the person that they were dealing with, and that maybe we had little interest in their life. People wanted to feel that they mattered and that they were important to us, and that they did, this suffering was eased by what they referred to as sensitive collaboration, meaning if we engaged, if we communicated, if we built relationships, somehow they felt better. It wasn't as bad. On the other hand, sometimes the clinicians, we're talking 10 years ago, but I still come across this today. There is just an expectation that you'll sort of do as you're told. Please be positive. I can't stand it when you come in all sad. And just get with the program and participate. Have you heard this before? Healing's a priority. Nothing else really matters. And in fact, people who go on to endeavour to self-manage, maybe like the workshop yesterday, find out information on themselves. They are labelled as difficult, uncooperative, and let's just call them non-compliant. You know, we have, in our life, in our professional life, all been guilty of this, but we can no longer act and be that way because we let them down. We set them loose to be alone. There can sometimes be a mismatch between what they need and what we think, the perceptions of both. So how can we advocate? I guess really what we're saying is we take a token term which can be found in documents, and we're talking about it now, this thing called advocate. How can we make it a lived reality for people in our care with issues on their lower limb? How can we take a concept and make it a functional aspect of our everyday practice? So this has to become real for the person receiving the care, and it has to become real for us who is delivering that care. So I'm going to pose a question. If we've got people with rights and people with needs, then as a clinician, as a patient advocate, are these important to us? You don't need to answer. But if yes, we have to make a decision. And that decision is, are we willing to incorporate that into our core, into who we are, how we act, how we speak, how we communicate? A decision and an action is required. We truly have to give them a valued voice. We have to understand this perspective, this illness, and how it impacts on them. And when they have a voice, we have to listen. We have to be present. We have to be engaged. And this communication needs to be effective. And in fact, when it is genuine, like my husband who came into the kitchen, we both have an office at home, came into the kitchen and he told me all about his day. He's in IT. I really tried hard to not switch off. I was engaged, I was looking at him. Oh, really? Oh, that must have been terrible. Right, he went on and on and on. So then I started to tell him my day, and he began to walk down the hall towards his office. Dear boy, I love him very much. But at that point, I didn't, because he had failed to engage in a two-way connection. And I have to catch myself in the clinical setting, particularly when I'm busy and part of my brain is thinking about someone else. You nearly have to shut that part off and really be there, don't you? Be there and be true and be genuine, because without that, they see right through us, just like I saw right through my Jeff. So we need to show interest. I love you, Jeff, because it's going on the film. We have to show interest, attention, respect, acceptability, and empathy. So it's this action. It's ultimately not just giving them the voice, giving them the ability that we will hear, but then we do something. We do something with what they've told us, because that will tell us what they need, and it will tell us which of their rights are not being met. It will make us stronger, and it will help us deliver good, sound professional care. And in fact, I just love this statement about competence and compassion, that if we have a caring capacity, which we cannot do if we're exhausted mentally and physically, we have to care for ourselves so we can care for others. But if we have a caring capacity, we create healing behaviours. So why advocate? I have one slide, and I am going to read you this quote because it's incredibly powerful. Advocacy can open doors to participation. It can right previous wrongs. It can change the balance of power. It can address bad things and injustices that might have happened to people before we became involved. It can improve our service delivery, and it can alter our attitudes and values as well as theirs. It inevitably empowers people in their everyday life. And this, my friends, is advocacy. You and them, your team, their family and friends, together as one, moving forward on this journey of which we all adore and love. I'm going to finish the presentation right here so that you can enjoy a full and enjoyable lunch. Thank you very much.